We'll move today. We're going to move around, clear out your spaces, give yourself ample space. We're going to jump around. We're going to move around on our arms today. This week marks our transition into movement principle number 4, right? Movement principle number 4 has our attention and focused on the shoulder girdle system. We'll move, we'll do a little bit of targeted movements in that area, and then we'll focus our attention intellectually in understanding some of the concepts of what's happening in the shoulder girdle. And then from there, we'll close our class today together with a little bit more layers and a deeper examination of that 4-part breath. Okay, to clear out your space, we're going to jump around. We'll get started jumping. Right? Doggy boy, over here. Sit. Stay. All right, let's jump, everybody. Let's do warm up the ankles and stuff first. Okay, let's do warm up the ankles. So check that your feet are right underneath your hips. Spread your toes out. Get the outer edges of your feet parallel with each other. Kind of general landmark would be your second biggest toes. Point those straight ahead. Right? So don't line up the big toes because that's going to have you externally rotating. Neutral will have, generally in most bodies, the second big toe pointing straight ahead. Okay? Good. And then now from here, you're going to just take your knees. Imagine that there's a table in front of you, and you're just going to use your knees. I want you to push your knees like you're trying to tap the table. Staying here like this, keep spreading your toes. You'll begin to feel this in your ankles, across the fronts of your shins. The knees are bending, the ankles are bending, and most importantly, notice that your hips are neutral, right? They didn't go into flexion. Very different from a conventional squat. Then just stand up. Right? Do that 9 more times. You're just going to press your knees as far forward as you can, and then stand. Knees press forward, and then stand. Right? If you're familiar with ballet, this would be, I believe, a demi-plie. Right? 5 more times. Spread those toes. Enliven. Feel all 4 corners of your feet. Excellent. One last time. Good. And then now from here, you're going to press your knees as far forward as you can until your heels now start coming off of the floor. You're going to slowly lower your hips down to a low knee bend, right? So you're standing on the balls of your feet, and your heels are the base of your hips. Good. And then now from here, don't push your butt back. Go straight up until your heels come back down. You're back in that demi-plie. You're not back here in a squat. And then you stand all the way up. Cool. Let's do that 4 more times. It's a bit challenging. Try your best. Knees continue to go forward, forward. Heels peel off the floor. Hips come down as low as you can. Then you go straight up. Heels come down as fast as they can. And then knees press back. Last 2. Forward. Heels. Heels come back down. And then all the way up. Last one. Forward. Heels. And then all the way up. Cool. And then now let's jump. Just 10 jumps straight up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Awesome. Now we're going to do some quarter turns, right? So a quarter turn, when I jump, I'm going to land to my left, facing left, and I'll come back to the center, right? So center's facing your screen or wherever you started from, and then a quarter turn to the right, and then back to the center. It's going to look like this. Turn left, back to the center. Turn right, reset center. Good. Do that 2 more times. Left, center, right, center. Last one, left, center, right, and center. Awesome. Now we're going to do half turns. you guessed it. When you jump, you're going to be 180, facing the opposite direction. Then you jump back to the center. Then we jump the opposite way and return back to the center. It's going to look like this. Half turn left, back to the middle, half turn right, back to the center. Good. Try that 2 more times. Left, center, right, center. Last time. Left, center, right, center. Good. 3/4 now. Okay. When you jump left, you're going to end up facing.
No!
Yes! When you jump left, you're going to end up facing right. It's going to look like this. Okay. I'm jumping left, and then I'm facing my right. And I come back to the center, and take it over the other way. Facing left, and back to the center. Cool. Try that 2 more times. Jump left, center. Jump right, center. Last time. Left, center. Right, center. Okay. You said no on that one. I'm excited to hear what you have to say in this last one. You just all the way around. A full turn. Okay? A full turn. You guessed it. When you jump left, you end up facing forward. When you jump right, you end up facing the same direction. Looks like this.
Oh shit.
The other way. There you go. It's been a minute since I did that. All right, try it 2 more times. Jump left. The other way. There you go. Okay, yeah. Flare all my hands up. Cool. Okay. Moving on. Back into your stance. Feet underneath your hips. Spread your toes. Press your knees forward.
Feeling dizzy.
Press your knees forward. Press your knees forward. Lift the heels, heels, heels. Low knee bend. And then put your heels down on the floor. Now you're in a squat. A conventional squat, the bottom of a squat. And then rock your knees forward, back onto the balls of your feet. Right? Rock your hips back and forward. 3 more times. Bottom of a squat, low knee bend. Squat, low knee bend. Last time. Low knee bend. Squat. Good. And then now from here, you're going to go ahead and walk your hands behind you. Point your fingers back, away from your hips, and then walk your feet forward a little bit. So now there's equidistance between your hips and feet and hands and hips. Okay? And then from here, go ahead and squeeze your chest together on the front. So take the front of your shoulder heads and squeeze them together like you're going to close the center of your chest. Good. And then now take the backs of your shoulder heads and then press them together. So now your chest starts to puff forward and up. Now let's do that a couple times. You're just going to feel your shoulder heads rolling forward, squeezing together on the front. And the scapula, or the blades of your shoulders, squeezing together on the back. And so you're just kind of playing with that direction, forward and back. Nice. Very good. Okay. And then now from here, just kind of let yourself hang. Right? You'll notice that your shoulder heads now go up towards your ears. And then now push them down. Your chest is going to lift. But your shoulder blades are going to depress or slide down your back towards your hips. And then just go up and down. To the ears. Away. Up towards the head. Down towards the hips. Cool. Okay, and then now rock yourself side to side, left and right. Very curious and interesting thing here is just kind of like your hips. Remember? Movement principle 2B. When one foot is off the floor, the other hip lifts. All right? So when you have a base on one side, that shoulder head lifts, the other shoulder just kind of droops down away from the ears. It's kind of like walking on your hands. Cool. Okay. So now we feel those distinct directions, right? The up and down of the shoulder blades, the squeezing together of the shoulder blades, and the pulling apart. Let's take those 4 directions. You're going to let the shoulder heads move up to the ears. Squeeze the shoulder blades together. Pull them down your back. And then slide them apart. Try to press the shoulder heads together in the front. Good. Now let the shoulder heads move up to the ears. Squeeze the blades together. Down. And then apart. Up. Together. Down. And apart. Try that a couple times. And if you do it a little bit more smoothly, you'll notice that you're making, I guess, kind of a reverse. If you're doing like a backstroke or something, it's like a reverse rope. So it goes up to the ears, together, down the back, and then apart. Good. And then come back to that neutral place. I want you now to squeeze them together on the front. So take it in parts first here in the beginning. Slide them down the back. Squeeze them together. Let them go up now towards your ears. So now it's apart, down, together, up. Apart, down, together, up. One more time like that. Apart, down, together, up. And then just make circles like that. Right? Smooth out the edges. Kind of now like a butterfly action. I'm taking these motions from different swimming strokes. Cool. Okay. And then now from here, walk your hands forward. Come back into your squat. Go ahead and come onto your hands and knees. Spread your fingers out. Place them on your mat or on the floor. And just like we align the toes, I want you to align your pointer fingers with each other, pointing them kind of at an angle like this, right? So really what would be parallel if you had like this weird 6th finger coming out between your thumb and pointer finger, let that be what would potentially be parallel with each other. Hug your armpits in together and then just rock yourself forward and back. Push down into your fingertips. As you rock yourself forward and you rock yourself back. And I'm just warming up here the hands, right around the palms and the wrists, the forearms, and the shoulders. Cool. And then now take your fingers, point them away from each other, and then now rock yourself side to side. The closer you bring your hands together, the bigger the stretch is going to be, right? So if you need a little bit more angle, widen your hands out. There'll be less pressure at the junctions of your wrists. Side to side. And then now flip your palms up. And this would be the opposite. The closer you have your hands, the more room you'll have there across the extenders of your wrists. The further you get the hands out, the bigger the stretch is going to be across the top of your forearms. You wiggle your fingers around, wiggle your neck around. It's all connected to each other. Okay. Now you can remain with the fingers pointing away from each other, or now spin the fingers to face you. Right. Oftentimes, particularly those who have hypermobile elbows, you can press your elbow forward. Even particularly for you, I want you to bend your elbows, right? Everybody, you want to feel as if you're going to do a bicep curl. Feel that there in your bicep. Press the muscle to your bone, and then rock yourself forward and back. Push down into the fingertips. Heels of the hands can lift and raise off the floor. That's fine. Draw out the shoulder blades away from your ears. Don't let them scoop into your ears. Awesome. Good. And then go ahead and shake it out. And then place both hands back on the floor. Take a moment here and sense the awareness, right? This kind of gathered awareness and contrast to the attention that you had previous, right, before kind of moving around on your hands. And can you feel this kind of suctioning around the balls of your knuckles and around the perimeter of the heels of your hands, right? So it's creating this circle. I like to kind of explain it like, if you ever put your hands together and make that farting sound with your hands, imagine that you're trying to do that to the floor. Cool, right? Enliven the entire hand, which will then inform what's happening in your wrist, in your forearms, in your upper arms, and there's going to be a sense of integrity across your shoulder blades. Cool. And then now let's go ahead and walk the hands back into your squat. And then this time you're going to bring your hands once again behind you, but you're going to keep your hips lifted. Right, so walk the feet forward a little bit. And then similar actions, same actions that we did prior when our hips were on the floor. But now you got to engage your belly a little bit. Don't let yourself sag to the floor. Keep everything else together and moving as one unit. It's just the shoulder blades moving. Spread them apart, meaning squeeze the heads of your shoulders together in the front. Squeeze the shoulder blades together on the back. All right? So spread them apart. Squeeze them together. All right? Like 3 or 4 rounds like that. Squeezing them or pulling them apart, drawing them together. Apart, and together. Good. And then now let's do up and down, right? So it's going to go up towards your ears. It's not your butt that's falling. It's your shoulder blades that are moving, right? They're elevating and then depressing, sliding down. Everything else is just moving because it's connected to this one part that's moving, right? Particularly, all the action is happening in the shoulder blades, right? The hips aren't moving around. It's one fixed unit moving at this very particular junction in the body. Cool. And then go ahead and put your hips down, take a break, shake your hands out. And then we'll take all those 4 directions, up and down, together and apart. And then we'll do that kind of circular action again. All right, so at first here, hands behind you, maybe about a foot or so, and the feet, same distance as the hands behind the hips. Lift the hips up. Immediately notice here when you lift your hips up, the pelvic floor engages, the backs of your thighs engage, your belly engages. Right? Then we'll start with shoulder blades going up towards the ears, squeezing them together, pushing them down, spreading them apart. They go up, together, down, apart, up, together, down, apart, up, together, down, apart. Now smooth it out. Make it a nice, smooth, circular motion. Up, together, down, apart. Cool. And then switching directions, bring them down, together, up, apart, down, together, up, apart, down, together, up, apart. Now make that a circle. See if you can just rest your attention on the shoulder blades moving, right? It's not your hips. It's not the rest of your body. It's just moving because of this gear is turning. Good. And then put your hips down. Shake it out. Awesome. All right. And let's go ahead and come back into our Malasana or squat. And then we're going to play with monkey. Right? Monkey has us traveling forward in a forward motion on our hands. Right? Pointer fingers kind of out like a V. Imagine that imaginary, technically 5th finger, right? Because your thumb doesn't count as a finger. This 5th finger coming out of the webbing of your index and thumb location. Right? Place that on the floor. Hug your armpits in. Draw your shoulder blades down your back and then lean forward. Good. And then sit your hips back. And plant your hands, lean forward, and then sit your hips back. Do that one more time. Hands plant, lean forward, sit back. This time you're gonna lean forward, slide your feet to your hands, and then back into your squat. Do that 2 more times. Travel forward. Inhale, plant your hands, slide your feet forward to your wrists, and then land. 1 more time. Down, hop, and forward. Try taking it backwards. Plant your hands, slide your feet back. Hands, plant your feet back. Hands, hold, and step it back. Good. And then now let's go ahead and stand. 2 jumps straight up. 1, 2, down into your squat. Travel forward 3 times. Travel back to where you started. 1, 2, 3. Actually, let's do our half turn. All right. So from here, jump. When you jump and turn, you're going to be facing the opposite direction. Half turn. Good. And then bring it back. 1, 2, and 3. Good. Now jump and turn the opposite direction. Bring it back towards the screen. Move with your breath. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. No rush. Inhale here. Half turn to the right. Bring it back the other way. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Good. Half turn to the left. And here we are. So some turns, jumping turns. Monkey, getting our shoulders and stuff warmed up. So movement principle number 4. Let's catch our breath. Drink some water, wipe the sweat off. Just messing around. The names of some of those things, demi-plie, those knee bends and stuff like that. A full plie, I suppose, right? A plie would have you going all the way down. Is that what the definition of a plie is? Right?
The plie would just be the act of doing it. So you would have a demi plie, which would be going halfway, then a grand plie is you go all the way down to the floor. Yeah.
So there's that.
Actually, I have a question about that. When going into the squat, I can't keep my feet facing forward. I have to turn them to get, am I working to get down straight, or am I just working to get down there?
Very good questions. And the answer depends on the specificity of what you're trying to ask.
Okay, so when we were doing the initial squat exercise and then getting down, so you lowered your ankles. I can't keep my feet straight. I have to turn them out to finish that part of the exercise. So do I just stop before I turn my feet and work on on that part, keeping my feet straight?
Yeah, so there's 2 very distinct things happening, right?
Okay.
We're coming from that demi-plie, going down to that grand plie, and I was referring to it as a low knee bend.
Yeah.
That you can have the knees facing forward because it's not the bottom of your squat yet.
Okay.
Like when we were learning in movement principle 2A, okay, so when this action, we're lying down on our backs, when you hug your knee into your chest, it's a little tighter here, right? But when you bring your knee out, you can get significantly more flexion in your hip.
Right.
So when you're moving and transitioning into that position, I mean, some people can have their knees together and feet pointing ahead, but if you put your knees out, you'll get more flexion in your hip.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that still correct to do it that way? It isn't wrong, or
No, it really just depends on
okay,
what you are trying to do.
okay,
Neither is right or wrong. There's various reasons to do one versus the other.
okay, good. Yeah, I just don't want to, because habits of doing it wrong, and then so okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I think uh, a more interesting thing to focus on is to understand what it is exactly you are trying to do versus being like, oh, this is right or wrong, but it's like I don't, yeah, it needs to be a little bit more specific. You know, that ability to discern what's happening, right? I think is what's more valuable than making that judgment of like, oh, this is right and this is wrong. Cool, great question. We're gonna move into the shoulder girdle, right? Movement principle 4. Just like in principle 2, this is subdivided into 3 segments or 3 sections. And just like with any new place we're going, it's helpful to pull out our maps, right? So here is Mr. Indiana Bones. Okay, so movement principle 4, divided into 4 segments, or excuse me, not 4, 3 segments. And to kind of orient ourselves, let's look at what's involved, right? So when we're talking about the shoulder girdle system, there are 3 particular anatomical structures that we're talking about, right? It's going to be the scapula, also known as the shoulder blade, right? The scapula, the humerus, the funny bone, right? Or the upper arm bone, and the clavicle, right? Commonly known as your collarbone, clavicle, right? And then to some degree, the superior end or the upper head, upper location of your sternum, also known as the breastbone, right? The center bone. And what we're looking at here, right? So that's kind of the lay of the land. And what we're looking at in movement principle number 4 is the movement or the freedom of movement of your arms, right? And its relationships to the shoulder blades. Similar to movement principle 2, right, where we proposed or introduced that what happens here at the base in your pelvis, right, relates very directly to what's happening in the sacrum. And the sacrum is the base of your spine, right? So naturally, what's happening here in your legs and in your feet will inform what's happening in your pelvis, which then will translate into your spine and most directly into your lower back, okay? So now if you can kind of follow that idea, we're going to follow that up the spine now. And what will be happening here in your shoulder blades will very directly impact what's happening in the thoracic spine, but also in the cervical spine, also known as your neck, right? So if there's imbalances happening in the shoulder blades, it's going to translate into your neck. And since your head is connected and perched directly on top of your cervical spine, it's going to have some kind of impact to your head. Christine's it's so fun. It's really fun to see everybody's faces. Right.
Do you remember that song from when you were in elementary school, like the hip bone's connected to the whatever bone, and like this?
Yeah.
That's the first thing I can't.
That's it. It is. It really is. It's connected. This is connected to this, and this is connected to this. It really is. From head down to your feet, every single thing is connected. There was one student who was relating to me one time, like in like a body conditioning class. He was saying like, oh, my right shoulder, my right shoulder was always in pain or like uncomfortable or something like that, right? And so after talking to him a little bit, he shared with me that he oftentimes carried his backpack, like for as long as he can remember, just on one shoulder, right? So with that, that created almost like a depression and then it kind of slide forward. So his whole body was tilting this way, right? Majority of the time. And this isn't like, oh, I played sports and I got injured, or like I'm a really old person and I fell. It was just, however old this person was, like 20 years old or something, just all his life that he can remember, just carrying his backpack on one side, right? So this is a good example of imbalance, right? This is something that would directly impact what's happening to the shoulders. And so with that, that kind of translated up and down the entire spine. And so there was a little bit of collapse on the left side, there of the lower left side of his waist, and it translated down the left side of his foot, right? Down his left ankle. And he's like, oh yeah, oftentimes when I walk, I can recall that like, I twist my left ankle more often than I would my right. There's this kind of like pattern that happens. And, it's not to say that, oh yeah, this is the reason why, but it all kind of traces and they're all kind of connected to each other, because if he carries his backpack here on this one side, it creates this kind of imbalance and weakness on the left side, which then kind of is a cycle that kind of triggers each other, right? So like the left side got weaker. So then, maybe the first, second, third time that he twisted his ankle, just kind of exacerbated that cycle, right? That kind of chain connected here. And then, so then you'd also have to turn your head this way, right? But yeah, so what I'm trying to say is an imbalance in the shoulder blades is going to create some kind of impact to the neck and also therefore to the head, right? Sometimes, which can sometimes translate into like chronic discomfort, like migraines and headaches and stuff like that, or various other ailments. And we kind of trace back to what's happening in the shoulder blades, okay? So that's the anatomy of it. You have the scapula or the shoulder blades. You have the upper arm bones or the humerus. You have on the anterior or front side, the clavicle. And then here on the front or the center, right, medially, you have the upper part of the sternum, okay? So drawing those parallels again, bringing our attention to the pelvis. We know that here, right, in the body, or at least in the physical sense, right, when we're talking about the physical body, there's a negotiation between strength and stability on one end, and then range and mobility and flexibility on the other end, right? So the ability to move stuff, but also at the same time, in the opposite end, the ability to like be stable and strong. So you can kind of see this, say, for example, in stark contrast. It's taking kind of like our stereotypical preconceptions about a yoga person, right? They're flexible. They could stick their head between their legs or whatever, right? Just twisting themselves around like a pretzel. So there's a lot of range and mobility. Now, looking at the opposite end of that spectrum, when you take a bodybuilder, for example, it's like, oh, the bodybuilder can't even pick anything up off the floor, right? Because they have so many muscles in the way. They're so stiff. And so, where was I trying to go with this? Oh, and so the range versus stability, right? So these are kind of drastic ends of the spectrum, right? Just to kind of conceptualize what I'm talking about. And so from the first few weeks, I was talking about the design of the body, right? The design will inform its function, right? Or its abilities, its capabilities. When we look at the pelvis, it is built like a tank, right? It is one of the most sturdiest and stablest structures in the body, the pelvis. And then when you look at the relationship, right, of the ball and socket here, right, and the ball in this instance is the femur, the upper leg, and then the socket, right, this cavity here of the pelvis, that you could almost, there's a lot of room and space for it to get snug, right? So it can like stick and fit in there pretty securely, right? So with its design, right, there's much more stability in the pelvis, but there's less range of motion, right? It's harder to go, for example, into extension, right? You can, there's very limited ability to bring it way back. There's less obvious movement and rotation. Hip flexion, right? If it's really healthy and stuff, you know, there's very clear and more explicit, right, movement in the pelvis there. Now going and investigating now the relationship of the shoulder blades or the shoulder girdle. It has a similar design, right? It is also a ball and socket, right? So with a ball and socket, remember, it can move in across all 3 planes, right? It can go on the sagittal plane, flexion and extension. It can go on the coronal plane, abduction and adduction. And then it can also move in the transverse plane, internal, external rotation, right? So it can move in all directions. But when you compare it now here to this kind of notch or groove of the socket, right, of the shoulder blade, compared to this big pocket that you have in your pelvis, it's almost like nothing, right? Like the ball is just kind of dangling there. It doesn't have this skeletal structure to nestle itself into, right? It's very, it's connected primarily by like ligaments and tendons and muscles, right? It just kind of wraps around the head. So oftentimes here, you know, I guess we'll go a little bit more into detail on that movement principle 4C, right? So that's just the basic idea. So knowing this will be more stable, right? The pelvis, but less mobile, right? Less range of motion. Now your arms can kind of move around all over the place, right? It has more range of motion and therefore less stability, right? That's why, like, I don't know, in movies or, you know, if you've ever dislocated your shoulder, oftentimes it dislocates in this direction, in the anterior plane. Because here in the back, you know, it kind of has a support, but literally there is nothing in the front that's holding it in place. Right? Skeletally, right? Bone-wise, there's nothing here. It could just simply pop forward. Yeah, you're still with me on that? And so the key ideas, or the main ideas that threads through movement principle 4 is to create stability in the shoulder blades, right? To create stability in the shoulder blades as we effort or move the arms around in different positions, right? In different directions. So the effort is to move the arms around, right? Move the arms, and the return is to stabilize the shoulder blades, okay? To create both stability and range of motion at the same time in a balanced way, okay? What's happening here in the chats? I did it. Okay. So the subdivisions of movement principle number 4 has to do with the different positions of the arm, right? The different positions of the arms. Movement principle 4A has our arms down by our sides, out here or out here, right? And what we're looking for is the positioning of the scapula or the shoulder blades, right? Here, out here, and out here, anywhere kind of in this realm. In a healthy body, the scapula will rest in a neutral position, right? It'll just kind of dangle in a neutral position. It's not tilted forward. It's not spreading apart. It's not squeezing together. It's not elevated. It's neither, and it's not like completely depressed, right? It's just naturally hanging, kind of like a cape down the back. So let's identify these directions, right? We were kind of doing that when we were warming our shoulders up earlier. There is a simple one. Let's start here, right? Up and down, right? So you can, everybody lift your shoulder heads up towards your ears, right? So you're like kind of shrugging. That's elevation, right? Shoulder blades are sliding up. And then when you pull them down, right? Pull them down, you want to feel kind of the bottom parts of your trapezius muscles pulling the shoulder blades down. That's depression. So you have up and down, right? Elevation, depression. Okay. And then now here, squeeze your shoulder blades together, right? Squeeze your shoulder blades together. That is retraction, right? Retraction. And then slide your shoulder blades apart. Right? That is protraction. Right? So squeezing the blades together on your back is retract. So it's coming back together, right? Retracting, and then protract, like you're pro this whatever action you're doing. So the shoulder blades are sliding apart, right? So they can go up and down. They can squeeze together and slide apart. And then now here, begin to bring your arms up over your head. Right? Reach your arms up over your head. That is upward rotation, right? So the shoulder blades begin to slide upwards like this, right? It's a little bit confusing in orientation, but I'll clarify in a minute, right? It starts to slide up like this. And then when you bring your arms back down, the shoulder blades come back down into downward rotation, right? Or coming back towards neutral. Okay, so those are the 6 directions that the shoulder blades can move. So looking at here, Indiana bones, they can squeeze together, they can slide apart, they can slide up towards the head, they can slide down. And then when you start to bring your arm up over your head, this doesn't articulate and it's all kind of fixed together. But when you start to bring your arm up over your head, so imagine that this is the shoulder blade will start to turn upward like this. It needs to move like this so that the arm can start going up over the head, right? So the socket starts to change orientation so that it kind of stays like this in the socket. And then when it comes back down, it starts to turn downward rotation or back towards neutral. Okay, any questions so far? Makes sense, yeah? Okay, cool. So those are the different movements, right? Movement principle A has it so that your shoulder blades are in neutral, right? And the positioning of the arms, so it depends on what's happening in the arms, right? The humerus. So when the arms are in neutral, out front, down by your sides, out to the sides, left and right, the shoulder blades haven't shifted, right? They haven't elevated and protracted. They haven't depressed and retracted or anything, right? So they're kind of in a neutral position. So that's the work of movement principle 4A. Some examples of how that translates as in yoga poses. Anytime you have your arms out like this to the side, say for example, warrior 2 or Vashisthasana, side plank, arms out to the side, right? Same positions. When you have your arms down straight in Tadasana, right? Or when you're sitting like this, you put your hands down by your sides. Or when you have your arms out in front, like plank or straight arm balancing, stuff like that, right? Arm balancing, right? So when you have your arms straight out, even here, bottom of a push-up, it's still a neutral position. These are neutral positions, okay? So that's 4A. 4B now is when you begin to bring your arms into extension, right? So then now, okay, everybody sit or stand in a place where your spine is neutral and your shoulder blades feel like they're just kind of draped down your back. For some, you could do this when you're sitting, right? But others, if your hips are tight or something's going on and you're like this, you're not definitely not in neutral, right? So stand yourself up somewhere where you can feel like you're in neutral. Okay, so then now here, begin to bring your arms behind your back, right? When you begin to reach yourself, your arm behind your back, what is happening to your shoulder blade? Does it go up, down, out to the side, squeezing to the middle? It goes down. Okay, Jolnisha says that she feels that it goes down. Okay. Anybody else? Alex? Juan? When you bring your arm behind you, what happens to your shoulder blade? Up, down, together, apart. Squeezes a little bit together. Okay. Interesting.
Like,
What happens, Alex? What do you feel when you reach
Like-
back?
something's long.
Okay. So when you typically the rhythm and pattern is when you begin to reach your arm behind you, your shoulder blade elevates, right? It goes up
Mhm.
and then it starts to tip forward and then spread apart. It moves away from the midline, so it spreads apart and then it goes up. Okay. So it's kind of like a turtle shell. Like if you do both, you'll feel it. Like it lifts up towards your ears. So two things happening, right? Two directions. The shoulder blades slide up and then they kind of tip forward. Okay. So that's movement principle 2B. When you begin, or excuse me, 4B, when you begin to bring your arms behind your back, your scapula will elevate and then the bottom tips will kind of slide apart from each other. Okay. And then to kind of illustrate that point, right? So everybody bring your arms out to the sides, point your thumbs down towards the floor. Okay. So this is internal rotation of the shoulder head. When your arms go into internal rotation, your scapula will slide up and then it'll start to tip forward, the head of it, right? So it's kind of like a cap that's getting put over your arm, right? This part will slide up and then tip forward, okay? The shoulder blade will slide up and tip forward, okay? Your shoulder pops. Be careful and kind to your shoulders, right? So when you're going like this, and then now from here, try to lift your arms up over your head, but keep spinning your thumbs behind you, okay? It's hard. You cannot. Unless you have very different types of joints. You know, for most of us, we cannot get this any further than this. Maybe you're even up here, even further up, but you cannot get your hands together. Okay, so then now here, taking those arms out, spin out your thumbs up and then start to spin them behind you. Okay, so then now here, you're triggering your shoulder blades to slide down your back and then kind of press forward. Feel that? Opens up your chest. And then now begin to bring your arms up over your head. Okay, so then now you have external rotation. And when you externally rotate, it cues the shoulder blades to depress and then tip its head back, right? So the bottom tips of your shoulder blades press forward in towards your chest, right? And so when the shoulder blades get drawn down, right? So let's say this is the shoulder blade. It gets drawn downwards and then tipped forward, right? That allows it to now begin to go into upward rotation so that you can bring your arms up over your head. Now, if you internally rotate, the shoulder blade will move up and then tip forward so that when you start to bring your arm up over your head, it's going to hit the bony part of your shoulder blade, right? That's why you cannot lift your arm up any higher. Does that make sense? Internal, external rotation. Okay. So when we're moving the shoulder blades up and down, it's going to do multiple things. Some of the things that it'll do is it will create, you want to create stability. Yeah, like flying. You want to create stability, but then also at the same time balance your ability to move your arm around, right? And so is it wrong to bring your arms back because it lifts your shoulder blade up and tips it forward? No, right? There's reasons for us to do this. You're gonna reach back for your wallet, or you're gonna take your purse off, or you drop your CDs from 2007 in the back of your car. Or you're gonna reach back and grab it, right? That's fine, that's good. However, if we do this unconsciously and kind of develop this pattern and apply it to every situation that we encounter, say, for example, doing body weight exercises, doing push-ups, or even doing these things that we do with our body in kind of a asana-based or pose-based yoga class, right? There's oftentimes in general classes, we have planks and chaturangas coming down, right? Now, if I know that being internally rotated, my shoulder blade forward, and it's like this, and I'm coming down on it like this, and structurally there's nothing holding my arm in place here, and I keep doing that over time, that's going to train an unhealthy movement pattern, and it's going to create some injury in the shoulder, and then maybe even potentially encourage the shoulder to pop out over time. That's not cool. And that kind of translates not just into yoga poses and stuff like that. And when you're doing push-ups, and what is a push-up, but what is a bench press but a push-up, right? You're just working your chest and the triceps. What is also more practical daily things, like lifting up your groceries, or playing with your little younger siblings, or if you're parents, carrying your children. We want to be able to not just do these exercises, but to also understand how it translates and how it's practical in us being able to express ourselves, but also to be able to interact with the things around us, right? So yeah, it looks cool to bench press, to do all these arm balancing and stuff like that. But fundamentally, what is happening here, right? So we can kind of understand that and apply it into practicing. Yeah, try it out, Christina. I see you trying to do some push-ups. Is there some chat questions? Let me look at that for a second. Right, so just to kind of recap, movement principle 4A, arms are in neutral, meaning the shoulder blades aren't adjusting. Now, that doesn't mean positionally they haven't shifted around, right? But internally and muscularly, you're trying to engage those muscles to keep them in that neutral position. And we'll work a little bit more specifically on that right now, actually. Okay, so everybody come on to your hands and knees. Okay, stabilize your core, right? The center, your belly. And then from here, just let your shoulder blades squeeze together, right? You're not squeezing them, but you just let gravity and non-effort, right? You're just not engaging anything. So then positionally here in this push-up position, our shoulder blades will come squeeze together. Our chest will drop towards the floor. Now, the opposite of that would be to push the hands down and to spread the shoulder blades apart, right? The effort would be to suction the bottom ribs into the back and create protraction in the shoulder blades, okay? Okay, so then now here, let the shoulder blades squeeze together again. The shoulder heads will probably slide up towards your ears. Now, just to kind of test this out, step one foot back and then step the other foot back. Oh, this is garbage. It's terrible. Not like judging like, oh, this is terrible. It just feels ridiculously bad. It feels terrible. Okay, so then now spread your shoulder blades apart, engage your chest, try to squeeze your arms together, then step one foot back and then step the other, right? Pull the bottom ribs in, pull the top ribs up, your sternum. It's still challenging, for sure, but I don't feel like my body's falling apart. Right? You put your knees down on the floor. right? So that's the thing. Angles, when you're working with your body, the angles to, depending on your center of gravity, which is, the biggest, heaviest part of your body is right here, the center of your pelvis. The further you are from that, the heavier it's going to be, right? So meaning when you're standing and stacked, you're right on top of your center of gravity. Now, when you start to be more and more and more and more parallel to the floor, your limbs are further and further away from that center of gravity. So that's one way to manipulate the load. An easy way to think about this is like, versus bench pressing. If you're lifting weights, you could always do like, oh, I'm just going to do 5 pounds today versus 15 pounds, right? But when it comes to your body, the angles begin to serve as kind of like the weight or the load. And then your direction and relationship to gravity. Now, if you have, we're all kind of all over the place as far as location goes, but if you just imagine, like if you're hanging from a monkey bar, right? And you're just kind of dangling there, your shoulder blades will slide up towards your ears, right? So the opposite of that to create stability is to pull your shoulder blades down your back, right? Now, if you begin to do that too much, it's going to start to push your chest forward, right? So to balance your spine back out, you're going to push your bottom ribs in so that the spine is in neutral, right? Shoulder blades draw down, and then the bottom ribs push in. And then taking that in all different directions. When you're lying down, right, if you're dangling from a bar, your shoulder blades will slide apart from each other, right? Does that make sense? Our directions, our relationship to gravity, right? If I'm lying down and I'm hanging and dangling from a bar, my shoulder blades are going to slide apart. So the work would be to squeeze the shoulder blades together and then draw them down the back, right? So you just kind of want to get a sense of like, okay, what is happening to my shoulder blades? How can I reinforce and support them in a stable position, right? And then likewise, if you have your arms down by your sides, right? You can do this sitting down with your hips on the floor, your arms down by your side. And if you're not doing anything, it's just going to slide up towards your ears. So push your shoulder blades down, and then you'll feel this very strong, stable positioning of the shoulder blades. Everything else will start to come into action. All right, we'll start to recruit. Oh, no, it's already 4:15. What? Okay, let's just wrap this up. Okay, so on Wednesday, we'll do a full practice movement principle 4A. Read the manual. It's short, it's like 2-3 pages, and then just a whole list of different types of poses. All right, so read that, kind of get a handle. You can read ahead and read all sections of movement principle 4. But each week we'll focus on one section at a time. When we have our arms in neutral, when we start doing, can focus on the different sections of principle 4, movement principle number 4. We have a bunch of planks and side planks. Maybe we'll get into crow, arm balancing, and we'll also investigate like bridges and stuff like that, and maybe even go upside down. Cool? Excited? Right? You have time. When you find the time, set a timer for 10 minutes. Just like how we were doing last week, you were doing the 4-part breath, right? Equal parts. This time, I want you to shift your attention and focus more on the holds, the retention at the top of your inhale and at the bottom of your exhale. Make them 1.5. So then now, if your baseline inhale was 6, then hold your breath for 9 seconds at the top and 9 seconds at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, it could be like, if your baseline was 3, then it could be like 3 and 5 or something like that, right?
Okay.
It's not a set number. Establish your baseline, take a couple breaths, right? Sit up nice and tall, get yourself physically ready. Take a couple breaths and then count your inhales. And once you kind of establish what that is, then begin to hold your breaths on all 4 parts, on the 2, the top and the bottom retentions.
Okay.
And then position yourself Nice comfortable seat. Again, you could do this sitting on a chair, right? Do yourself a favor and sit on that chair, or lift your butt up, your hips up off the floor, right? Using a supportive pillow or blanket or even your block, right? The key thing is that your hips feel like you can maneuver them into neutral, right? Oftentimes when we're sitting straight on the floor, even for myself, the knees, or there's a flexion in the hips, which will then create flexion in the spine. Right? We want to be able to feel as if our spine is just suspended. And sometimes that's cued by the pelvis, more often than not, feeling of kind of tipping forward. Then from there, we can recalibrate and then push the tailbone down towards the floor. And then that'll reverberate all the way up to the remainder of the spine. The arms here, starting down by your sides, wrists towards the knees. Spread your fingers out. Feel the vibration in your fingers. Feel the webbing, the vibration in the palms. Right? Good, and take a deep inhale through your nose. And then exhale out of your mouth. Inhale once again through the nose. This time exhaling out of the nose and close your eyes. Maintain this awareness. Continue to spread through your fingers. Feel the webbings. Feel the straightness of your arms, the triceps engaging, the fingers shooting like lasers. Good. Sit bones anchoring, crown of the head tall, shoulder blades draw back together, and then down the back. Feel spacious across your shoulders and neck. And then from here, keeping those eyes closed, just pick a finger, right, to touch to your thumb. Doesn't matter which one. A softness in the connection in contrast to the focused intention of keeping the arms straight, the spine tall, and the breath the center of attention. Good. Continue to deepen your breath. In through the nose. Back out of the nose. On the next cycle of breath, begin to count. How long is that inhale? Again, you're not trying to change the breath too much, but just focus and rest the attention on counting how long it takes to inhale. Good. Now take that number and at the top of your inhale, hold your breath for that long. Meaning if it took you 5 seconds to inhale, hold the breath for 5 seconds. Good. And then now build that same duration into your exhale. Again, as an example, now it's 5, 5 hold, 5 exhale. And then now complete that box with a hold for the same duration at the bottom of your exhale. All 4 sides, same length, 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. Good. And then now begin to increase those holds, the retentions to 1.5. If you have 4, then hold it for 6, 5, round it up to 8. If it's 6, hold it for 9. Hold the spine at attention. Keep the elbows straight, fingers enlivened. See if you can now, at the top of your inhale, keep the collarbone lifting. Press your belly out as you hold the breath. As you exhale, keep your collar lifted. Allow your belly to draw in towards the spine, keeping the spine tall. Keep your collarbone lifted. Good. About 2 more minutes like that. Stick with the frame you created. And if you're finding that you're short on the inhale, at the end of the bottom of your exhale, or the bottom of your hold, see if you can let the spine just enough come into flexion. Maybe there's a little bit more air that will exit the body. Good. And if you're still finding a little bit of a panic there, that you can't take a full breath, then shorten the baseline and adjust accordingly. Maybe now is 4 and 6 or 3 and 5. And last minute. And at the end of your last exhale, allow the breath to come back to its normal pattern. Sense that those spaces between each breath, right, those transitions have always been there. There's this natural transition between the inhales and exhales. Exhales and inhales. And now from here, go ahead and press your palms together in front of your heart. Acknowledging this space within. Take now the thumb knuckles and press them in between the center of your eyebrows. Allow your attention to be enamored by this sensation, this physical sensation of the thumbs pressing into the center of the brows. And take one final breath. On your exhale, rest your arms, your wrists back by your knees, palms up. On the next inhale, open the eyes, keep them soft and steady. And begin to blink the eyes, allow them to dilate as you transition out of meditation. And here we are. And thank you so much for sticking around.